All right, welcome back everybody. And here is our last lecture video of the unit. So today we're focusing on learning target 8. I can make and interpret a velocity versus time graph. So you're to do this for today. You should have, for step 1, already watched the acceleration videos. There was 2 of them for you. Step 2 is to watch this lecture video and take notes. And then step 3 is to complete the motion review Google form. Make sure you get step 3 done. It's going to help you out for your assessment that is tomorrow. All right, so what I want you to do is start out with tell me what is happening at segment A here, and segment B, and segment 3. So take a moment to pause, and let's go over the answers in a minute. All right, so let's take a look here. So at segment A, they are speeding up, right? We can see our velocity is changing, it's increasing. So now let's take a look at B. Segment B is just a horizontal line here. So we can see that they're going at a constant speed. The velocity is not changing. And then for C, we can see that the velocity is decreasing. So it's slowing down. So now let's take a look at these two graphs. I want you to write down how they are different. So make sure you take a note at the difference in the axes, specifically the y-axis between them, and write down how are they different. All right, well, let's take a look. So we can see at our graph on the left here, our velocity is not changing. So we are going at a constant speed. Say this is 5 meters per second. They're going at 5 meters per second constantly. Now, if we look at our graph on the right, it's a distance versus time graph, and we can see the distance is not changing. So that means this object or person is at rest. Their distance is not changing. So now let's think about, is motion acceleration? So I want you to write down what is happening at this graph and what is happening in this graph. And so again, notice that the one on the left is a velocity versus time graph, and the other graph is a distance versus time graph. So write down what's happening at each graph, and then we'll go over it. All right, so what's happening here? For our graph on the left, we can see that our velocity is changing. It is speeding up. So in this graph, it's speeding up, and so we're going to have a positive acceleration. Now, if we look at our graph on the right, remember what we talked about last week. When we have our constant slope, that means we're going at a constant speed. And so we're increasing at a certain meters per second over time there. So again, on the left, our velocity is speeding up, so we have positive acceleration. Here we are going at a constant speed. All right, same thing. I want you to write down what's happening at each graph here. Pause the video and then come back and we'll talk about each graph. All right, so our graph on the left here, our velocity versus time graph. So we can see that our velocity is slowing down, it's decreasing. So we actually have a negative acceleration. And now if we look at our distance and time graph over here, we can see again that we have that constant slope. So we're going at a constant speed towards home. So now let's think about, is acceleration occurring at this graph? Let's talk about it. We see our velocity is increasing over time. So that means we are accelerating. Now let's take a look at this graph here. We have our velocity, and our velocity is staying the same over time. So are we accelerating or not accelerating? Not accelerating, because our velocity is not changing. All right, and here's another one for us. Are we accelerating or not accelerating? So this one's a distance and time graph. And so we see here, we have a constant slope, which means we are at a constant speed. So that would mean we are not accelerating because we are at that constant speed. All right. Now I want you to pause the video here and I want you to describe what is happening at segment A, segment B, segment C, and segment D. So write down what's happening at those 4 spots and then come on back and we'll talk about it. All right, so at segment A here, we can see our velocity is increasing, right? We're speeding up, so we have a positive acceleration. But now at B, we're starting to slow down. We're decreasing our speed. So we're actually going to have a negative acceleration, right? We have that negative slope there. And now C, we're at a certain velocity and we're staying at that same velocity the whole time. So we're just at a constant speed here. Then when we get to segment D, we start speeding up again. So we have that positive acceleration. All right, that is it for our notes today. So make sure that you took down the notes, you practice these different scenarios here, you know how to describe what is happening, and then go ahead and complete the motion review guide for today, and make sure you're all caught up and ready for our assessment tomorrow. Let me know if you have any questions.